My parents sold my inheritance without telling me while I was working overtime, so I took legal action, and they've been begging ever since. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and I've always been the one hustling to build my future. While my friends were out partying on weekends, I was at my office, desk lamp burning late into the night, balancing spreadsheets, client calls, and project deadlines. Every promotion I earned, every extra hour I logged, felt like a small victory proof that hard work actually paid off. I wasn't rich, but I was stable, independent, and proud that I could hold my own in a world that didn't hand anything to anyone. My parents, on the other hand, always seemed to have favorites. My older cousin Ryan, or sometimes my older sibling, could do no wrong in their eyes. I was quiet, reliable, and loyal, always doing what they asked without complaint. Even when they subtly compared me to Ryan or praised him for achievements, I knew I had worked just as hard to earn. I swallowed my pride and kept going. I'd tell myself it didn't matter, that my life was mine to build, part of that future. I envisioned included the small inheritance left by my grandparent, a modest house, and some savings tucked away from me. It wasn't life-changing money, but it represented stability, a safety net, and the freedom to make my own choices without asking anyone for help. Every time my parents mentioned it, in passing, sometimes joking, about how you'll finally have your little empire someday, or teasing Ryan about how he'd have to wait his turn, I'd nod, smile, and feel that quiet warmth in my chest. Nothing seemed off. It felt normal, safe, like an unspoken promise that the future I was working toward was guaranteed, so I kept grinding. I took the extra shifts, poured myself into every project, and saved every extra penny I could. I imagined the day I'd finally step into that inheritance, maybe renovate the old house or invest the savings into something meaningful. I felt proud, secure, and almost untouchable. Little did I know that the very people I trusted most, the people I called family, were quietly laying the groundwork to take it all away, and that thought buried deep. Never once crossed my mind, yet it was about to. After months of non-stop work, the first little cracks started showing, though at the time, I didn't recognize them for what they were. It began with small, seemingly innocent things, my parents making vague comments about decisions that needed to be made regarding the house, or how everyone has to pitch in financially. I brushed them off, thinking they were just casual conversation or idle chatter. After all, I'd always trusted them. It never occurred to me that the inheritance I'd been dreaming about could become a source of tension. I noticed subtle shifts in their behavior, too. They started whispering in corners when I walked by, smiling a little too quickly, or avoiding eye contact when the topic of money came up. Once, I overheard my mom laughing softly on the phone, mentioning a deal that would make things easier for Ryan. My heart sank a little, but I rationalized it. Maybe they were just trying to get everything in order, making sure no one was left out. I told myself I was being paranoid. At work, the grind didn't stop. I spent long hours at the office, sometimes skipping meals just to catch up, thinking that all this effort would eventually give me the stability I craved. But I started feeling this gnawing unease in my chest, a tension I couldn't quite place. I began to notice details, missing documents, doors slightly ajar where they shouldn't be, files moved around. My parents' comments, once playful or casual, now carried an edge I couldn't ignore. One evening my dad said casually over dinner, the house will be sorted out soon. Things are moving along. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. The words sounded harmless, but the tone, the way he avoided my gaze, made my stomach twist. It wasn't outright hostility, but it was a warning, subtle and quiet. I went to bed that night staring at the ceiling, heart racing, feeling a mix of anxiety and disbelief. Something was happening behind my back, something I couldn't yet see. But I clung to hope, telling myself it was nothing serious. Yet the seed of doubt had been planted, and it was growing fast. Little did I know, that seed was about to bloom into the kind of betrayal I never imagined. I doubled down on work, convincing myself that if I stayed busy enough, I wouldn't have to think about the unease gnawing at me. My days blurred into nights, the office lights flickering as I pored over spreadsheets, responded to endless emails, and handled client calls that never seemed to end. Weekends became a foreign concept. I was either in the office or trying to catch up from the week before. I told myself this grind was temporary, that all the sacrifices would pay off in the long run. But somewhere deep down, I felt that unease tightening around my chest. It's like a warning I couldn't ignore. My parents continued to act off. They'd make passing comments about finalizing things with the house or getting everything in order. And my stomach would twist, though I tried to shrug it off. I noticed how my mom would glance at me when she thought I wasn't looking. Her smile just a little too practiced, her words a little too carefully measured. Ryan, my cousin, would casually drop hints about family matters or investments, always leaving me in the dark. I wanted to confront them, but I kept telling myself, maybe I was reading too much into it. Maybe it was all normal adult stuff I didn't need to understand yet. But the more I ignored it, the more obvious it became. Documents I thought were mine were gone. Phone calls I overheard made me uncomfortable. One evening, I came home exhausted after a 16-hour day, and my dad was on the phone whispering urgently. I caught the word sell, and now before he noticed me. My heart raced. I froze, unsure if I'd misheard or if reality had finally broken through my protective bubble of trust. I went to bed that night staring at the ceiling, hands trembling. The office lights outside my window were still on, a reminder that my life was all work, all sacrifice, but for what? Something inside me whispered that the very foundation I thought I had, the inheritance I believed was mine, was already slipping through my fingers. And for the first time, I realized I might not be as safe as I thought by this point. The little seed of doubt had grown into a gnawing suspicion I couldn't ignore. I started paying closer attention to every word, every glance, every slight shift in tone whenever my parents mentioned the house or the inheritance. It felt like walking on a tightrope over a pit. I couldn't see. I knew something was wrong, but I had no proof. Just a gut feeling that had grown sharper with every passing day. I tried subtle questions at dinner. So, how's everything going with the house? I asked one evening, forcing my voice to stay calm. My dad tensed, and my mom's fork froze mid-bite. Oh, it's nothing to worry about, she said quickly, a little too quickly. Just some arrangements were taken care of. I nodded, heart sinking, but pressed on. Arrangements? I asked, trying to sound casual. My dad shrugged. Just details, nothing for you to stress about. We've got it covered. I could feel the weight of their avoidance pressing down on me, like I was being shut out from something that was supposed to be mine. I wanted to push harder, to demand honesty. But there was this invisible wall between us built of years of subtle favoritism, soft manipulation, and the quiet expectation that I would always trust them without question. At work, I found myself distracted, replaying every conversation, every glance, every whisper I'd overheard. I couldn't focus, and it frustrated me because my life had always been about control and stability. How could I control anything when the people I trusted most were acting like strangers? Then came the evening that tipped me over the edge. I walked into the living room and noticed the paperwork on the dining table, the papers I'd been assuming were mine. My stomach dropped when I saw the signatures and dates. Something had been happening without my knowledge, something I wasn't supposed to see yet. I backed away slowly, heart hammering, and realized that my world, the inheritance, the stability I'd counted on, was slipping out of my hands faster than I could even process. And in that moment, I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind replayed that dining table over and over, the papers, the signatures, the dates. Something had been sold. My inheritance, the house, and the savings that I had assumed would one day be mine was gone. Just like that, erased without a word, while I was working overtime, building the life I thought I was in control of. My chest tightened with a mixture of disbelief, anger, and a deep, knowing betrayal I had never felt before. The next morning, I couldn't wait to get answers. I asked my mom casually, "Hey, about the house? I saw some papers last night. Did something happen?" Her eyes flickered, just for a moment, and my stomach dropped. "Oh, you must have misread it." "Everything's fine," she said, too quickly, too smoothly. My dad joined in. "Yeah, son, don't worry about it. We handled things for the best. But the unease in their voices, the way they avoided looking at me, screamed louder than any words ever could. I felt my hand shaking. I had trusted them. I had worked my ass off thinking that my future was secure, thinking that family meant protection. And now, the people who were supposed to have my back had quietly betrayed me. My cousin Ryan had the audacity to drop by that afternoon, grinning. "Looks like things are sorted nicely, huh?" I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make them feel a fraction of the panic and rage that consumed me. I called a lawyer that evening, barely able to keep my voice steady. "I think my parents sold my inheritance without telling me," I said. "I need to know what my options are." Every word I spoke made it real. Every sentence confirmed that what I had feared was not paranoia, it was fact. The inheritance that represented my future, my security, my hard work, had been taken from me in silence. By the time I hung up, I felt a cold, furious clarity wash over me. This wasn't just a loss, it was a betrayal of the deepest kind. And I swore to myself, right then and there, that I wasn't going to let it go quietly. The question now was simple. What could I do to take back what was mine? The next evening, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I had to confront them, to see their reactions, to hear the truth straight from their mouths. I found my parents in the living room, casually scrolling through their phones, as if nothing had happened. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to talk about the house," I said, my words slicing through the quiet room like a knife. My dad looked up, a practiced calm on his face. "Son, we've told you, everything's fine," he said smoothly. My mom added quickly, "It was for the best, you don't need to worry yourself." But the slight quiver in her tone betrayed her rehearsed words. I felt a mix of anger and disbelief bubbling inside me. "For the best?" I snapped. "You sold my inheritance while I was working overtime. How is that for the best?" They both flinched, but they didn't apologize. Instead, my dad tried the guilt route. "We only did what we thought would help the family," he said, his eyes avoiding mine. My mom leaned forward, almost pleading, "You're overreacting. It's money it's not worth destroying relationships over." I laughed bitterly, the sound hollow in the room. "Not worth destroying relationships? You betrayed me, trust. Everything I believed in. That's the relationship you've destroyed." Then came the kicker. My cousin Ryan, who had somehow been invited over under the guise of family dinner, chimed in with a smug smile. "Honestly, you'd have just dragged your feet forever. We were just trying to make things easier." The sheer audacity made my blood boil. I wanted to storm out, scream, make them feel even a fraction of the betrayal I was drowning in. And in that moment, something shifted. I realized that no amount of pleading or confrontation would fix this. Talking wouldn't reclaim what was mine. The only way to fight back, the only way to take control, was to go through proper channels. Legal action. Court. Justice. I left the room that night with my hands trembling, my mind racing. In a burning resolve, they had underestimated me. And that was about to be their biggest mistake the next morning. I didn't look back. I called a lawyer I'd heard about from a colleague, someone known for handling family disputes with precision. "I need to take legal action," I said, my voice taut with controlled fury. "My parents sold my inheritance without my consent. I want it back, and I want accountability." Every word made it real. Every syllable confirmed that the betrayal I'd feared was now an open battle. The lawyer was efficient, professional, and surprisingly reassuring. "We can file a case to reclaim your property and challenge the sale," he said. "It won't be easy, but justice is on your side if the paperwork proves your claim." I felt a strange mixture of hope and dread. Hope that the law might finally give me a chance to reclaim what was mine. Dread at the thought of facing my parents in court. Knowing how deep the deception went, word got around quickly in our small circle. My parents learned that I wasn't backing down, and the shift in the household was immediate. Texts, calls, and passive-aggressive comments started pouring in. My mom tried to guilt me. "Do you really want to ruin everything for everyone over a house?" My dad, equally desperate, said, "You're tearing the family apart. Think about what you're doing." Even Ryan smirked through text messages. As if mocking my efforts, I felt the weight of the conflict crushing me, but I couldn't turn back. I had spent years building a life with integrity, sacrificing sleep, weekends, and even personal happiness. And yet the people I trusted most had tried to take it all from me. Every late night, every skipped meal, every extra shift suddenly felt like proof that I deserved this fight. But I had the right to reclaim my future. Court dates were scheduled. Documents had to be gathered. Evidence collected. Every step reminded me that betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was tangible, legal, and real. And as I prepared my case, I realized something. For the first time in years, I had a power my parents hadn't counted on. They had taken my inheritance, but I was about to take back control. Once word got out that I had officially filed the case, the atmosphere at home changed overnight. It was like walking into a house full of silent accusations and thinly veiled hostility. My parents avoided me at all costs. Meals were tense, conversations clipped, and every glance felt like a test. Even my extended family started taking sides, whispering behind doors, sending pointed texts, or offering unsolicited advice about keeping the peace. I could feel the walls closing in, but I knew I couldn't back down. My parents' attempts at manipulation intensified. My mom would corner me in the kitchen, voice trembling as she tried to guilt me. "We raised you, fed you, supported you. Don't throw that away for something material." My dad would follow with his own version, trying to frame the inheritance as a trivial issue. "It's not about the house, son. We just want you to understand the family's needs." Every word, every pause, every inflection was a test of my resolve, and I didn't flinch. Ryan, ever the opportunist, started dropping hints that my stubbornness was only making things worse, smugly implying that the legal route might alienate more family members. But instead of panicking, I felt something I hadn't expected: clarity. Their efforts to intimidate me, to bend my loyalty and sense of familial duty, only strengthened my determination. I realized that the betrayal wasn't just about money, it was about control, about proving that I could be manipulated like the rest of them. Late nights at work became my refuge. The only place I could think without guilt or pressure. I meticulously reviewed the documents, worked closely with my lawyer, and prepared for court day after day. Each passing week was a reminder that this wasn't just a fight for property, it was a fight for respect, trust, and the life I had built with my own hands. By the time the first court date approached, the tension had reached a peak. My parents were pale, evasive, desperate, while I felt a strange calm settle over me. They had underestimated how far I was willing to go, and I knew, deep down, that the battle had only just begun. Court day arrived faster than I expected, and with it came a tidal wave of anxiety I hadn't fully prepared for. Walking into that sterile courtroom, the smell of old wood and polished floors, I felt the weight of everything crash down on me: the betrayal, the sleepless nights, the endless tension at home. My parents sat across from me, faces carefully blank, but their eyes betrayed panic and calculation. Ryan smirked from the corner, as if enjoying the show. I clenched my fists under the table, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to convince myself that I could handle this. The proceedings dragged on for hours. Every time the opposing lawyer spoke, I felt my stomach twist. Tiny procedural setbacks, missing paperwork, even the judge's neutral tone made my chest tighten. For a moment, I questioned whether I had overestimated my strength, whether all my hard work, my sacrifices, my trust in the law had been for nothing. The idea that I might lose, that my parents could get away with this, gnawed at me like a physical ache between sessions. I retreated to the hallway, trying to steady my breathing. I felt utterly alone, even though I wasn't. I thought about every late night, every overtime shift, every penny saved. I thought about the house I had envisioned, the savings I had planned to invest, the future I had imagined, and it was slipping through my fingers. The betrayal felt like it wasn't just theirs. It was reality itself turning against me. My lawyer tried to reassure me, but even their words sounded distant. I slumped against the cold wall, hands trembling, the fluorescent lights overhead blurring my vision. The fight I had thought I was ready for suddenly felt insurmountable. My confidence, my pride, my sense of control, all of it seemed to crumble in that moment. And just when I thought I might collapse completely under the weight of fear and exhaustion, a thought flickered in my mind. I had survived worse betrayals before, hadn't I? I straightened, wiped my eyes, and whispered to myself, almost defiantly, they haven't won yet. After what felt like endless hearings, document submissions, and tense courtroom standoffs, the day finally came. The judge called my case, and I sat there, hands clasped so tightly my knuckles ached, waiting for the words that would either shatter me completely or give me the justice I had been fighting for. My parents sat across from me, pale eyes darting nervously, Ryan fidgeting like a cornered animal. The air in the room was thick, every whisper, cough, and shuffle amplified by the silence of anticipation. When the verdict came, I felt my chest tighten not with fear, but with a rising tide of vindication. The judge ruled in my favor. The sale of my inheritance was invalid. The property and savings were legally mine. Every late night, every sacrifice, every ounce of emotional pain I had endured suddenly crystallized into this moment, proof that trust, hard work, and resilience could still hold power over betrayal. I watched as my parents' faces fell. My mom's eyes welled with tears, a mix of guilt and disbelief, while my dad's jaw tightened and his hands shook ever so slightly. They had tried to manipulate me, to guilt me, to convince me that the inheritance was for the best, but the law had sided with truth, fairness, and my unwavering determination. Ryan, smug and cocky for so long, now looked small and unsettled. Realizing the game he thought he was controlling had slipped from his fingers, even as relief washed over me. I kept my composure. I didn't gloat. I didn't shout. I simply sat back, letting the weight of the victory settle, savoring the quiet triumph. This wasn't just about money or property. It was about respect, boundaries, and the realization that betrayal could be fought and overcome. On the drive home that evening, the city lights reflecting off the windshield, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and empowerment. My parents had underestimated me. They had tried to steal my future while I worked tirelessly, and now, for the first time in years, I felt fully in control. But as I parked outside my apartment, a lingering tension reminded me the battle had been won, but the scars of betrayal would remain. The days following the court victory felt surreal. I walked through my own apartment, the familiar hum of the city outside the window, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of calm that wasn't tinged with anxiety or dread. The inheritance was mine, legally and undeniably, and yet the emotional aftermath lingered. I couldn't ignore the betrayal, the way my parents had manipulated and deceived me while I poured everything into building a stable life. But at the same time, I felt stronger, more self-assured, and more in control than I ever had before. I took time to reflect on everything, the years of late nights, the sacrifices, the relentless grind at work, and the subtle favoritism that had always existed in my family. I realized that the legal win wasn't just about reclaiming property. It was a statement. It was proof that I wasn't the naive, compliant child I had once been. I had the right to stand up for myself, to enforce boundaries, and to demand respect even from my own parents. Communication with my parents remained tense, but I was careful to establish boundaries. I didn't lash out or shut them out completely, but I was no longer silent, no longer blindly trusting. They had tried to manipulate me, and now they had to respect the line I drew. I started to see subtle changes, awkwardness, even guilt in their behavior, but I refused to let it dictate my emotions. I also began rebuilding my own life, more intentionally than ever. Investments I had planned, renovations on the house, and small pleasures I had postponed all became priorities. Every choice was mine, untainted by favoritism or deceit. As I sat one evening on the balcony, watching the city lights flicker against the night sky, I allowed myself to feel the quiet satisfaction of empowerment. The battle had been brutal, emotional, and exhausting, but I had endured. I had fought, and I had won. And while the scars of betrayal would remain, they no longer defined me. Time passed, and the house the savings. The inheritance all legally mine, became a symbol of more than financial security. They were proof that I could fight back against betrayal, that I could reclaim what was mine and stand firm even when the people I trusted most tried to manipulate me. My parents, once confident in their control, were subdued, hesitant, and even desperate in subtle ways. They tried soft apologies, small gestures, but I kept my boundaries. I wouldn't let them off the hook completely, not this time. Then came the final twist. While reviewing some old paperwork for a personal project, I stumbled upon documents my parents had thought I'd never see. There were additional accounts, investments, properties they had hidden, not destroyed, not sold, but entirely under their control, tucked away in their names. My initial reaction was disbelief, then a slow, satisfying realization. This was my chance to fully secure everything that was rightfully mine. With my lawyer, I moved quickly, ensuring these assets were accounted for, legally recognized and, this time, untouchable by anyone. It was a quiet revenge. The kind that doesn't need shouting or confrontation. I didn't humiliate them publicly. I didn't need to. The control, the transparency, and the empowerment were mine, and they were left powerless to interfere. My parents were forced to acknowledge my victories, to finally respect my independence, and even Ryan had to step back, realizing the game he thought he controlled was gone. Sitting in my newly renovated living room one evening, the city lights reflecting off the windows, I finally allowed myself to breathe. I felt relief, pride, and an unshakable sense of self-worth. The betrayal had hurt, the battles had been grueling. But I emerged stronger, wiser, and fully in command of my life. I had learned that trust could be shattered, but resilience, justice, and careful strategy could rebuild a life even better than before. My parents had tried to take everything while I worked tirelessly. In the end, I didn't just get it, but Kai got control, empowerment, and the final, satisfying truth. They had underestimated me, and I had won on every front. And for the first time in years, I felt truly free.